Okay, cool. Welcome everybody. I know it's December and I know that it is crazy end of the year time. It is also, if you're a music teacher, it is concert time, all the things. So we are just really excited that you're here. I do want to take a second and introduce my new colleague. Jenny, do you want to introduce yourself really quick to our Arts Learning Lab folks?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm Jenny. I'm the new communications and outreach specialist here. You may be receiving emails from me or passing stuff on from Becca. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of sit in on these meetings and hear what you guys are learning and kind of going through all the grant processes and everything for the very first time myself. So it feels a lot like a lot of information coming at me. I can imagine what you guys are going through as you're doing all this process. So I'm excited to just kind of learn with you guys too. So thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks, Jenny. We are excited that you're here. I'm gonna jump right into it, friends. So today for our December Arts Learning Lab, we are taking a deep dive into arts education grant opportunities, specifically to Idaho, later on in the presentation because we have our Utah friends here. But we are going to quickly go through some kind of universal grant tool tips and tricks. And then we will pause for a second so that our Utah cohort can move into a breakout. And then we will do a deep dive into the Arts Idaho Arts Education Annual Project grants, which are open now. And the deadline for our application is due January 31st. So you have over a month, but I'm happy that you're here so we can talk through some of the changes and talk through some of the common tips and common pitfalls that we see as panelists, as folks in my position, reading grants and looking at grants as part of our job description. So jumping right in, the state of Idaho provides two granting opportunities for arts education. So Arts Idaho, we are in charge of the Arts Education Annual Projects Grant. This supports activities for K-12 arts education, and the funding is up to $10,000. You must be a nonprofit or a unit of local, county, tribal, or state government. That means schools and districts can apply for the grants. Also, arts organizations, tribal communities, other state agencies, anything under that category. I do want to point out that this particular bullet point at the end, making learning visible, if you click on that link, or when you get the PDF and get that link, you will be able to see past projects that we have granted. So you can kind of take a look through those final projects and look at some of the stuff that has been happening around the state. Another grant that I want to draw your attention to is that the State Board of Education does have a grant called Expanding Arts Access in Rural Public Schools. This one is specific to basically things. So if you need art supplies, if you need a bass, if you need um, a trumpet, if you need instrument repair, if you need a kiln, this is what that specific grant is earmarked towards. It must be an entire district or charter school that's applying for this grant, and you do have to be rural, defined under Idaho code. This particular grant opens and closes in September, so just have that on your radar that will be something you want to look out for if you are a rural educator. Also, the National Endowment for the Arts just came out with their guidelines and application for their grants for arts projects. So that is now available as well. There are two application deadlines. One is February 12th, coming up quick, and the other is July 9th. These are for grants that take place beginning in 2027. And when this Arts Learning Lab goes out in the newsletter, you will have links to this opportunity as well. This is also a link to their program guidelines. So that's not something we're going to deep dive into today, but just know that that is available now. We want to start today with an activity. I know we've been doing a lot of PowerPoints and sitting and getting, but we would like to get your brain thinking and opening up your minds a little bit. So if you have a pencil or paper handy, if you have your computer open to some sort of document, we want to start out by giving you 5 minutes. This activity is to help get your brain going about writing a compelling grant narrative. So we want you to choose one of the following creative writing prompts below, and I'll read those out loud, and then I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and let you just write. So the first prompt is write an online dating profile for your school or organization. The second prompt, your school or organization is releasing an album. What's the album title, and what are the titles of 5 of the songs on the album? And lastly, create a haiku. Write a 5-syllable, 7-syllable poem that describes your organization or cause. And I'm going to mute myself and allow for 5 minutes of just creative and exploration into your creative writing self. Okay, that is your clue that time is up. Would anybody like to unmute and share their writing or put your haiku in the chat? I can't see anybody, so please just go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute and share as you would like.
I can be the chat voice if you like.
Perfect.
Here, I'll even turn my video on because I forgot that I turned it off, but here I am, chat voice. Michelle says, voices of experts shape the craft of teaching art. I return renewed.
Love.
Sarah, can I read yours too? Sarah says, looking for someone who can handle my adaptations and still see the art in me. About me, I'm Longview, a quirky special education powerhouse where switches click, communication boards sing, and creativity always wins. I've got a big heart, a strong OT game, and a kink for inclusive design. Nice. My ideal match loves collaboration, celebrates small wins like they're gold medals, and isn't afraid of a little glitter or drool. If you can appreciate sensory-friendly lighting and the smell of tempera paint in the morning, swipe right. Swiped.
I love it. Nice work, you guys. Is there one more?
Josh asks in the chat, what are we doing? Sorry, I'm late. Do you want to bring us back to it?
Oh, yeah. Is it not showing up?
Oh, we got you. We got you. But
Oh,
Josh,
okay.
we are responding. We just did an activity. So we're workshopping some grant narrative prompts. Yeah, nice. You got it. Okay. Oh, here's another haiku from Samantha. My haiku about my band. We are Rimrock Band. We are very small and proud. Our concert is soon.
Awesome. All right, cool. Thank you so much, you guys. Hopefully that got you excited about your program, your organization, and that you are ready now to jump into grant writing and to get yourself some Benjamins for your cute little band or your cute little art program. So let's dive in. So we wanted to make sure that we went over some top 5 tips for grant writing, especially since that's probably not something that we would maybe say that we are good at or that we are well versed in. I know that I personally could not say that until I started jumping right into grant writing processes and trying to basically think backwards as an educator in helping with these arts education criteria and guidelines. So we will go through these grants, and please, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We will make sure that those are answered. But we are going to move on to the first top 5 tip, and that is to give yourself plenty of time. So make a calendar when you first look at a grant of all the grant related dates. That includes technical assistance sessions, internal due dates, and any follow up dates that might have to happen in regards to a grant. For example, like a final report, or if you have a mid session check in. Each grant application can look a little bit different, so you want to make sure that you include those dates and have them on your calendar so you know what's coming up and when. Waiting until the last moment to begin writing and getting all your evidence materials or supporting documentations at the last minute will not give you enough time to handle whatever unexpected questions you might have or documents that you might have to gather or budgetary issues that may arise, especially if you're not well versed in what counts as cash or in kind or match. Like, what do those words even mean and how do I budget that? So, again, making sure that you are prepared and organized and that your materials are gathered before you even jump into the proposal and the narrative. The second tip is make sure that you read carefully. Reading carefully the criteria, guidelines, and the restrictions will help save you a lot of time and effort. For example, if there is an evaluation rubric available, make sure you read through that carefully because that's going to help you backwards plan and answer the narrative questions correctly. It also may help you determine whether or not the narrative questions are even parallel to the criteria that they're looking for. So again, make sure you read through all the materials, evaluation criteria, walking yourself through those narrative questions and making sure that you are answering them specifically to what is being asked. Many granting organizations post previous award winners on their website, including us. That link to Making Learning Visible is one of those resources. And you might want to familiarize yourself with these successful programs and projects who've received funding in the past so that you might be able to mirror or match something familiar or recognizable or interesting to you that you might want to copy. Most grants require a final report, so make sure you understand the deliverables requested for that final report. And then the process doesn't end once you receive that grant. I know a lot of people don't fully understand that grants work very similarly to contracts. The only difference is usually in a contract, I'm asking you for deliverables and you don't have those choices of what those look like. But in a grant application, you get to choose those deliverables as long as they are aligned to that project guideline. And that's the, but there's still pieces that have to be completed in order for you to receive either full funding or making you eligible to apply again next year. So make note of what those responsibilities are to your granting organization. The next tip is to divide the application into parts. There's no way to sit down and to try to complete a grant application all in one sitting. You want to tackle the lowest hanging fruit first, or the simplest tasks, those things that you can answer quickly or that you have knowledge of or can find. And then the other pieces, you want to make a checklist and make sure you go through those things in it before the application is due, including a checklist of required documents. Don't include documentation that isn't requested, that's not helpful, and also think beyond the narrative. Often applicants will ignore the review criteria and simply answer the narrative questions, bypassing supplemental materials altogether. So make sure that each part is answered. Also, take advantage of technical assistance. Many granting organizations have open office hours, or they're available through email or phone call. So making sure that you can contact that person and ask for assistance would really help your application. That is what we're here for. So don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you don't understand a terminology or a process or a requirement or a criteria. If you can, attend the grant panel as well when the panelists are reviewing your application, because that can provide a lot of feedback and a lot of understanding, especially when you're hearing what folks are talking about when it pertains to your grant in particular. Take notes on what is said and how you can adjust future applications based on the feedback. The final tip is to be truthful and know your audience. If you are writing an arts education grant, for example, to us, the Idaho Commission on the Arts, you don't need to write long paragraphs defending the value of the arts. We know, we're there with you, we got you. However, if you are writing a grant to the Idaho STEM Action Center to expand your STEM program into STEAM, you might want to add some data points as to why adding the arts to a STEM curriculum could enhance that opportunity. So making sure you share some statistics about the value of arts in schools in that particular grant would make sense. So understanding your audience, answering the questions truthfully, try not to don't lie about statistics or demographic data, people served, partnerships, etc. Because nowadays it's just too easy to Google search and verify just about anything. So you want to be as truthful and aligned as possible. And finally, just a general observation about the writing process itself. You want to answer your questions or the narrative in clear and concise ways. Trust that your panelists are qualified and find ways to let your organizational personality and energy come through, which is why we did that prompt for you today as a kickoff activity in getting that personality and that energy to shine through in your writing process, which I think you all did a fabulous job. So kudos to that. Make it easy for the panelists to read and refer to specific information, including your supporting documents. Be organized, avoid acronyms. Not every arts ed person understands every arts ed or educational acronym, and boy, do we have a million of them. So write out those acronyms, and then also make sure that you proofread, because a really clean application goes a long way. Before we jump into the common pitfalls that we see from panelists, or that panelists have observed in these arts ed applications, does anybody have any questions or comments before we move forward? Okay, I'm going to take your silence as we're good to go. So moving on. Four common pitfalls that we see from organizations and even from schools that we want to make sure are on your radar so you can avoid this moving forward. So here are some reasons why grants are not funded. Many times applicants do not read all the instructions or the criteria or the narrative questions to the full extent. Sometimes supplemental materials are random and they do not support the narrative. And a lot of the important information that panelists are seeking is often lacking or missing. So if you are writing the grant, you need to make sure that the grant application answers these basic things. So who, what, why, and how. So who are your participants? The what is the project activity? Where and when is it happening? And we put a little asterisk there because you do want to tell us where and when, but that can be lumped into the what. The why is this important? What are you doing? What are you accomplishing when it comes to this project? And then how will you execute it? Uh, Many times we have to talk through what accommodations really mean in education. This is really specific to arts organizations who may not understand this terminology. So basically, ensuring access to high quality arts experiences requires accommodations that support learners. So it's not about 504 compliance in a building. And that's usually the answer that we get when we ask arts organizations to explain their learning accommodations. What we really are looking for are specific accommodations that support learners' various needs. They can be physical, they can be cognitive, they can be sensory, and they can be emotional needs. In K-12 art settings in particular, accommodations should preserve the artistic challenge while removing barriers to participation. It's not dumbing down the learning. The goal is to not lower the expectations, but to create multiple pathways for students and to develop the skills to express themselves and engage meaningfully in the artistic process. Again, please don't include in the narrative about your 504 building compliance. We already know it is because that's the law and you have to be compliant. So you don't need to tell us. Education and learning grants are asking specifically whether you understand the populations you are serving and that you are thoughtful in those learning accommodations. Don't just list every accommodation that you can Google. You really want to align the learning needs of your students in this project to the accommodations in which you're going to provide. We will be discussing strategies for inclusive arts instruction in the February Arts Learning Lab for those of you that may be a little confused or not fully understand what that looks like. Another pitfall that we come across is just not fully understanding the learning design of a project. So, for example, when many times the grant writer for your arts organization does not understand K-12 education, or you have somebody at your district level who writes all the grants and again doesn't understand the arts learning design structure. So I would highly recommend that in order to fully understand arts learning design best practices, it is very apparent in the application if an arts organization or a district did not include their arts ed expert. So please make sure that you're including your education department or your teaching artist in the application. Also, please be aware that for Arts Idaho education grants, we would prefer that you use the current Idaho content standards as they have been recently updated and are more aligned to Idaho's educational ecosystem. A committee of your peers, so all arts educators, spent many months revising and prioritizing the standards for you, and they should be utilized. Also, one standard from one category does not portray the creative and artistic process. The Idaho Art Standards are built around the artistic processes of create, refine, present, respond, and relate. If you need more information about using content standards in the arts, again, we're not going to deep dive here, but we did deep dive in October's Learning Lab. So if you need to go back and look at a deep dive in standards, that would be the Arts Learning Lab to look at. And finally, assessment and reflection. High quality arts instruction relies on assessment and reflection practices that honor the creative process, meaning that they measure skill development and empower learners. In K-12 arts education, assessment is not simply about evaluating a final product. It is a holistic cycle that documents growth, deepens understanding, and strengthens artistic identity. Assessment supports both the process and the product, respecting that mastery in the arts requires experimentation, reflection, and revision. Assessment is not merely evaluative. Wow, I cannot say that at 5 o'clock. It is relational, reflective, and deeply tied to each learner's artistic journey. Your final report, in most cases, is going to ask for the documentation of this progress in ways that are meaningful to the learner and that matches the learning objectives of your project. So effective assessment would mean that it informs your school or organization in what ways the project would need to adjust instruction. For more information on assessment and reflection, you will want to refer to October. Oh, wait, I messed that up. So assessment and reflection is October's Arts Learning Lab. No, I'm saying that wrong. It's November's Arts Learning Lab. Standards was October, assessment and reflection is November. Sorry to be confusing folks that are watching this video later. Okay, so those were the common pitfalls that we see as panelists. Now we're going to jump into the other two pieces of most applications, and that's your supporting evidence and your budget. So all of your supportive materials and additional documentation will vary from application to application. However, you want to make sure that anything you submit is supportive evidence of your narrative, your learning goals, and your overall project. Again, don't send anything that is not requested. We don't want to comb through things that we don't necessarily need and don't necessarily support. So if the grant application provides examples of what appropriate additional documentation looks like, make sure you choose an example that's going to best support your organization and your narrative. Don't give me every example of the documents included. Look at the examples and decide what is the best one or couple of ones that are going to support each question. Okay, again, I'm going to pause to see if anybody has any questions because we're about to jump into budget, which is can be really confusing. And so if anybody has anything that they want to share or ask, I'm going to pause here to answer questions. Okay, silence means moving on. Okay, your application budget still plays a powerful role in your application, and it can be another piece of your narrative. So you want to make sure that, again, everything aligns to the project in which you are requesting funds for. You want to pay close attention to match, in-kind, cash, and new cash requirements. If you don't understand what that means or what those budget categories or terminology are, again, please take advantage of that technical assistance call so that you can work through your budget because it is an important piece to an application. Be realistic about income expenses. As teachers and as arts orgs, we tend to downplay our worth. Do not downplay your worth. If you are worth $45 an hour of your of prep, include that. So make sure that you are being realistic about how much something is going to cost. Pay attention to what what the funding organizations will fund or don't fund. So for example, many state and national funds are not going to go to teacher salaries or to uh, pay for a full-time art teacher. You want to make sure that you're asking for what is allowable expenses. If you are unsure, again, ask and then add clarification to your budget as necessary. We're going to quickly go through some of the things that are kind of difficult to understand when it comes to the budget. So you want to start with what the project expenses are going to be. So you want to list everything you need to make the project happen. So you need to think about salaries for staff that are working on the project. You need to think about materials and supplies. You need to think about equipment costs, travel, transportation, volunteers, the costs associated with the evaluation piece and the documentation piece, and then expenses for your marketing or distributing your project-related materials. For the project revenue, you want to list all sources of income, and in these two boxes are examples of straight cash sources. So for example, if you have an annual fundraiser and a portion of that goes to your program or your organization, specifically to the arts ed piece, arts organizations tend to give us everything. We don't want your whole operating budget. We want the educational pieces of that. And so any in cash events that happen that are specific to you and your program is what you're going to count. So if you have an annual fundraiser, if you have PTO funds that go to you, anybody who donates to your program, and then if you have any school or district funds, that would all be included as cash. In kind is still an expense, but it's not being paid directly by you. So for example, you would add your school personnel time. So you as the teacher, if you were applying, that would be your salary and benefits. all the supplies that you already have on hand, volunteer time and effort, like what would that be paid in real time? And then you can also include what it would cost as far as using your school equipment, your building, those types of things. And just so you know, we have some experts in our audience who can answer questions about what this means. If you want to drop them in the chat, I'm sure that they are answering. Okay, so again, what I just said, the first thing you do is you add up your project expenses. The second thing you do is you add up your project revenue. In our particular grant, you may request 50% of expenses up to $10,000 for Arts Idaho particular grant. So that means if your total expenses equal 20,000, then you can ask up to 10,000 of that to be covered by the grant. If your expenses turn out less than the allowed request amount, then you still would do the same formula. You would still add up your total expenses and divide by 2, and that would be your maximum request allowed. What if your expenses are more than the allowable request amount? Since our budget cap is 10,000, even if your total expenses are over that amount, the maximum request is still 10,000. When you do other applications, every application is different. So you might have a 1-to-1 match or a 3-to-1 match. What you want to make sure that you understand is match types are funds from sources other than the grant, which is your cash, or your in-kind, which is the first and second step. So when you go through the budget, make sure you calculate your matches correctly. If all of your staff is spending all their time on this project, then it's appropriate to calculate 100% of their time as an equivalent value. However, if you or your organization or your staff is only spending 25% of their time, don't use their full salary and benefits as a 100% match. Again, remember that no matter how wonderful the narrative, a poorly written budget that doesn't accurately reflect your project proposal can cause confusion and could reflect poorly on your overall score. So again, this is another more
on.
steps.
We
Oh,
got
yeah.
we got a question in the chat.
Okay.
Can you give some examples of projects that have been funded by Idaho Arts? I've only ever written grants to get a specific item, so I'm a little naive on what could be a project that may involve paying other people or something that doesn't specifically end with getting an instrument. Can you talk about any of that?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And actually in towards the end, when we do our PLC breakouts, we're going to look at what's called for Arts Idaho making learning visible. And I will also include that in the resource section. But basically, it's a whole web page where you can look at past projects that have been funded by us. And I have the link in it. I have the link in the PDF or in the slides a couple more times too. So you'll be able to find it. It's also linked in, if you're on the Canvas module, it's also linked in there.
Sounds good. I also just dropped it in the chat. So if
Oh,
you guys need
perfect.
to take
Thank
a
you.
look at that, but don't glaze over this example project budget. It's really important. We'll
Yeah,
get there.
we'll get there. Good. So after you've calculated, after you know what you can request, you do need to go through and make sure that you understand which part is your in-kind match and which part is your cash match. Also, I would recommend that if you're coming up short, right, that in-kind is going to really help you bump that up. So just make sure that you understand what in-kind is and what that counts as. Remember that identifying total in-kind contributions helps bump up your project expenses to ask for that full amount. Okay, I keep showing this over and over, but my colleague JD is who put this together, and she gets questions about this constantly, and so she's showing you in multiple different ways how to do your budget. So first, your total expenses. Second, your total revenue. Third, understanding how much you can ask, and then going through the actual budget items and identifying which are in kind and which ones are cash. And then that way you can give us a full picture of what your expenditures will be. Here's another way of looking at it. Match is a formula. So you are requesting A, your expenses are C, and you're solving for B. Okay, we are at that point where I'm going to stop sharing for a second and make sure that Utah has the opportunity to go into their breakout so they can talk about their particular granting process. And then Idaho, if you stay with me, I want to share with you the changes that have been made to our arts annual project grants so that if and when you apply, you're not surprised. So I'm going to stop share really quick and make sure our Utah friends can get into their breakout groups. And then we'll jump into specific Idaho stuff.
Fun, super secret Idaho stuff. I'm excited. I updated that link in the chat. So if you went to a 404 error before for making learning visible, that was my bad. It's correct now.
Hold on. Did I open it yet? There we go. It's opened, Utah.
Uh-oh.
I think. Did I do it? Okay, I
I
did.
don't. Uh-oh. Okay. I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay, bye.
Okay. Is everybody left? All Idaho folks with me? Okay, cool. Oh, Kirsten, do you need help to go to Utah? Or you're just with me?
No, I'm with Utah. Sorry.
That's okay. Do you need
Thank
help to
you.
go in or are you
Yeah.
good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not in. Sorry.
Okay. Let me get you.
Oh, they just asked me. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, which means I'm not going to be able to see you. So can I do another co-host? Bob, can I make you a co-host so you can watch the chat for me?
I can only stay for 5 minutes. I have lessons in just a minute, so.
Oh, that's right. Is Michelle, are you willing to co-host for me? Or
Yes,
anybody?
yes.
Okay, gotcha.
What do you need me to do?
When I go back to sharing or not being able to see you, that I can't see the chat,
Okay,
and I just need you to help me monitor.
gotcha.
Okay. Okay, guys, I am going to go through this quickly so that you can maybe finally have PLC time. So let me share again. Okay, so you guys can all see that, right?
We're seeing your note screen or not
My note screen. Okay.
your what do I want to say? Presenter view.
Let's see. There we go. That should work. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So those of you that have been into our web grants and know how cumbersome it's been, and not only is it not a friendly platform, but it also the narrative, it was just really lengthy, and it was really difficult for panelists. Those of you who have served as a panelist, I've served as a panelist, I know Michelle served as a panelist. It was really hard to pull out from the narrative and from the rubric exactly what we were trying to identify. So I consolidated the narrative structure into only 5 questions, and not with a million A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs, because I felt as if um, this would give an opportunity to really clearly explain the project and also align it to exactly what we're looking for. So these are the 5 questions now. So the first question has to do with project rationale and the learning need. So I'm highlighting, or I'm bolding and highlighting, underlining those whys and hows and all that we were talking about when we talked about alignment. And so you'll see that those bold terms so that you can understand how we're aligning into what we're asking. So the first criteria is project rationale and learning need. So the question is, describe why this project is needed for your students or community. Identify the learners, specific learning needs, and how the project ensures access for all students. So again, zeroing in on the actual people that you're serving. Examples of evidence that you can upload to support this narrative question uh, are like school and community needs data, letters of support from teachers, administrators, or community partners, or an accommodation plan or inclusion strategies that you know you're going to use in order to support the learning. I know that the panelists are not going to want to see all of this. They're really going to want to see the one example of this that is going to best support your narrative. The second question is artistic and instructional impact. So describe the intended impact on student learning and artistic growth. Discuss how this project will contribute to what students know and are able to do. That's your standards. And how it might strengthen your school or community's arts learning ecosystem. So examples of evidence that may be uploaded. So documentation of past project outcomes, testimonials from students, teachers, or teaching artists, press coverage, social media, or exhibition or performance programs. So kind of a showing your final overarching final performance would support this question. The third criteria has to do with learning design and standards alignment. So explain how this project provides sequential standards-based learning in the arts. Identify the key learning goals or standards and describe the progression of activities that will build students' skill and understanding. This is that actual learning design process. So evidence that may be uploaded, lesson or learning plan showing learning objectives, standards alignment, and sequential activities. This should be pretty easy for those of you already in the K-12 realm. I am sure this is going to be a learning curve for those of you that are grant writers for your organization. The fourth is assessment and student reflection. So describe how student learning will be documented and assessed. Explain how feedback and reflection are built into the process for students and educators. Again, examples of evidence that may be uploaded, an assessment or evaluation plan, a sample rubric, or a sample reflection form. The reason why you want to do samples is because your final report is going to be where you are showing this evidence in actual student reflection work, if that makes sense. And then finally, the fifth criteria is project partners and roles. Identify who will lead and support the project. Is this artists, educators, organizations, and describe their roles, experience, and contributions. Again, examples of evidence that may be uploaded, artist and educator bios or resumes, letters of commitment from partners, or a sample contract or workshop outline. For our particular grant, we would only like 5 evidence examples, and that would be ideally one example per question that you think best supports your narrative. In this slide, there is a link to the application evaluation rubric. Again, you'll get all of this information in this next coming week. And this is also found on the Arts Annual Grants website information page. The rationale and the benefits of consolidating is it streamlines what once was 20 plus sub-questions into 5 concise categories. It aligns with contemporary grant review processes that we are used to, and it allows panelists to evaluate both the narrative quality and evidence of authentic learning design. It reduces application fatigue and increases clarity on expectations. And here's that technical assistance that we've been talking about. For anyone who would like help through the application or have questions about the application if you are applying, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions and gain support. So there are 3 sessions that will be available in January for constituents, January 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th. I want to make sure that you are aware of other funding sources besides ours that are smaller in scale, but accessible and easy to apply for. And some of these you may have already utilized in your classroom or in your organization. But Donors Choose is a granting agency that makes it easy for anyone to help a classroom in need. And so public school teachers from all across America create classroom project requests, and you can give any amount to the project that inspires you. Idaho Cap Ed Foundation awards Idaho educators up to $800. The Idaho Community Foundation grants are several times a year, and it's determined by your geographic location. Those awards are usually based, are need-based and are educational and community-based. This foundation allows recipients to participate in arts-related experiences typically within the summer months. So if you are an arts organization in Idaho and you are looking for funding resources to tell your parents if they can't afford your camp for whatever reason, then I would make sure that they know about this particular grant, because it can include anything. People have used it for dance intensives, online art courses, music lessons, art competitions, travel stipends. So this one really is beneficial, particularly to students. There's also a middle school music grant program. This is another foundation that supports the efforts of teachers in community service with their students. The grant provides funds for the purchase of in-school music classroom equipment, supplies, and transportation. There is a service piece to it, but I don't think that that's a make it or break it, because we know that your music programs are out in the community serving anyway. So this is one of those good opportunities for that. The Wittenberg Foundation currently gives priority to innovative and enriching projects which significantly improve the quality of life for children and young people. This foundation particularly supports activities in the geographic region of Southwest Idaho. So if you are in that region, this is a grant for you. Okay, it's now your turn. So if you know of a granting opportunity, please share it with us now, especially one that I didn't list and you know about that you think should be added to this list. Does anybody have one that's been successful for them?
I haven't used it, but I know that the National Art Education has a foundation, and actually can give out large grants, but you have to be a member of the National Art Education Association. And they, from my understanding, recently they took kind of a year off to streamline everything and make it less archaic.
Oh, nice.
I just received a grant for a new marimba from the Expanding Arts Access in Rural Idaho Schools grant. And that application was fairly short, actually, and pretty straightforward. So,
And that one's a no match one. That one's really
Mhm.
flexible. Mhm.
yes.
I know that Jim Phillips up north has been pretty successful for GoFundMe. Am I saying that right? GoFundMe?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know some districts have policies relating to GoFundMes and such, though.
Yes. Yeah.
But then,
And we had
of
talked
course,
about that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
You do have to check with your district. That's yes.
Yeah, like mine, I've checked with Donors Choose, and my district didn't actually know about Donors Choose. And so they checked it out and said that it would be fine, but my district still has policies about um, whatever the official thing they title it with funding sources and whatnot. That's not specifically a grant. I just have to fill out a paper. But yeah, every district will have their own policies. But like my old district in Amarillo, Texas, every teacher had a donors choose for just everything. All the music teachers had them going, and there was no paperwork involved with it. So it just depends.
Hmm.
Rebecca, Daniel, sorry, in East Idaho, there's a CHC Foundation that grants are twice a year, and they are like capital expenses, so great for equipment.
Nice. Cool. If you still have recommendations, keep putting them in the chat. I'm going to continue. We are almost done. I wanted to just give you a sneak peek into next month's Arts Learning Lab because it is still about funding formulas and finding those alternative resources. So next time on the Arts Learning Lab, we're going to be discussing formula grants, which are federal funds. And this comes from the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it provides your state educational agencies, which for us is Idaho Department of Ed, and your local educational agencies, so your districts and schools, the discretion to define a well-rounded education and to determine how best to use federal, state, and local funds to meet students' holistic needs. So several federal formula funds can be leveraged to boost arts education. The, the the clincher to this is it's usually done through a committee, and it's not always advertised when they do that. So it would be one of those situations in which you would need to talk to your administration and then ask to be part of that committee that decides. To give you an example, these are the types of funds that can be used towards arts ed and their purposes. So Title I Part A, this can go towards arts education program as a strategy to support academics. Title II Part A, to provide professional development on approaches to arts instruction. Title III, so for example, Title II Part A, some districts use this for our arts teachers to go to their annual conferences. Again, it's something that you have to ask for, but it can be leveraged to do that. Title III Part A is arts focused instruction for English learners. Title IV Part A, or Title IV Part A supports that well-rounded education. Title IV Part B is for arts organizations that partner with schools and districts for after-school programming and summer enrichment. And then IDEA Part B supports students with disabilities. So if you have an inclusive music classroom, that could fall under those funds. And then Perkins 5 supports arts-related career and technical education programs. Okay, I've talked enough. It is now your time. These are your professional learning prompts for anyone who is here for the credit. I'm going to stop. I'm going to make it so I can see you. So I'm going to change my settings. Okay, there. And you can still see the professional learning prompts. Okay, great. I'm also going to stop the recording.